So today's webinar is transforming customer support, replacing Zendesk with DevRev. So I'll just go over a little bit of what we will cover, and then I'll provide some background on myself. So first, we'll start with a little bit of background on the SaaS world and the several innovations over the 25 years or so that have led us to where we're at now. We'll look at a typical setup with the tool like Zendesk that you may be using. We'll talk about the gaps and some of the problems you yourself may be facing. We'll also have a chance to listen to a DevRev customer that migrated from Zendesk to DevRev and get to learn from their experience. Lastly, we'll cover how DevRev has learned the lessons and closed the gaps of those legacy support tools. Just a little bit of a background on myself. I am the product manager for AirDrop, which is our migration and sync tool. I actually started my career as a support engineer, so I have been using Zendesk or Salesforce Service Cloud or Freshdesk, whatever the company happened to be using at that time. And I myself have experience changing support platforms many times. None of my companies were ever really happy with their existing support solution. I then went on to actually do software development and solutions development, solutions engineering rather, before ending up as a product manager. So I got to interact with the tools in various different ways, both as a developer, as a support agent, and a product manager. So how did we get here? We can take the starting point to be the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. That's when we saw a lot of these new internet-focused companies. We know it ended in a crash, but it did usher in the rise of the internet as a major source of commerce. Since then, companies large and small, whether in technology or not, have launched websites and apps across various platforms. We're not just talking about a simple website, we're talking about apps on your phone, apps on your PlayStation, apps in your car. When you think of companies like Target or Domino's or Fidelity, you don't actually think of them as tech companies, but those actually have huge tech departments. I would know, I've actually worked directly with these companies to help them accelerate their DevOps adoption and can attest to how large their tech departments are. And those tech departments are also spread out worldwide. So not only did it make this possible, this introduction of these departments saw the emergence of a lot of new companies to support them. And we saw the use case for a lot of B2B businesses with growth engineering teams and success teams coming into play, along with large support teams to support these types of customers. And now, of course, the latest trend is we are in the race to get AI right. So let's look at the evolution through the lens of some popular companies. If we look at the early 2000s, we saw the rise of subscription and internet-focused companies like Salesforce, CRM, SAP, and Oracle. These companies pioneered the move from desktop to the web, but they mostly catered to enterprise-type companies. A little later on, moving on to the early 2010s, we kind of saw the rise of smaller companies. And with it came a suite of support tools. We saw Jira for developers, we saw HubSpot for sales team, and of course, Zendesk for support. But for the most part, the era before 2010 was still a self-hosted one. We had moved away from offline processes, but companies still often dealt with their own hardware. I know when I started my career, we had a rack. We had a server room still. Now, the move to the cloud that came afterward made it a lot easier to start building software. And with it came a slew of new players and even more services. We had easy and instant communication with Slack. We had API-first companies like Stripe and Twilio, and of course, the cloud providers themselves that enabled all of this to happen. And now we are in this current AI era, and we see a lot of companies trying to race to get it right. Now, having understood the history a little bit, we can reflect back and acknowledge that the support tools of the past were actually a pretty good improvement over what was available. But they were built for a different world and have some serious gaps today. Here are some pain points I myself have experienced with these. For starters, support data like logs or usage is typically not available to the support agent in the support tool. This means that when a support agent has to look at a customer issue, they often have to jump to a different tool to look at logs or to look at usage. When it comes to collaboration between support engineering and sales, there's often a loss of context. So by the time a customer issue makes it all the way to a developer's plate, they don't really know what the context and why the customer is asking for this. Then we have automations and analytics. And these are really afterthoughts in the current support tools. And they often lead to the requirement of integrations and layers of middleware. And while the existing platforms can be extended and augmented with integration, the overhead cost of implementing and maintaining them leads to a higher total cost of ownership. At my previous company, we in fact had an entire team just to maintain our support tools and the related integrations. Lastly, and probably most importantly, these gaps not only affect the current state of how we provide support, they also hinder any potential adoption of AI into the support process. So to get a better picture of what those pain points look like, let's look at a typical Zendesk setup. Zendesk does provide a pretty good set of core support functionalities out of the box. This includes a UI for agents, it has some macros, it has some triggers, it added a knowledge base article not too long ago. But as the company's needs grow, you'll often find yourself trying to compensate for missing functionality. If you need analytics, well, you're going to need to use a different service and you're going to want to integrate. Do you want to interact with your developers? Well, you'll need an integration for that. Do you want to interact with sales? You'll need a different integration. Do you want to provide observability and usage details to support agents? You got it, another integration. And this ends up creating data silos and often leads to loss of context, not to mention making it a lot more inconvenient for the support agent. Later on, we'll cover how DevRev helps prevent loss of context, even in the cases where you do integrate with other services. Now, having worked support myself, I know that for every ticket that requires some interesting troubleshooting and debugging, there are dozens of simple queries that can be generally answered via documentation. Now, our customers don't always look at documentation. Some do, but do have your mixture of customers. Zendesk and other legacy tools use macros. And macros are a pretty good solution when the alternative is nothing, but we can do better because macros still require your agent to read that ticket, context switch, and churn them out. A better solution would be to deflect those automatically. So here is a clip of what that deflection may look like. What you're looking at now is Bolt's production environment, where they're using a search widget to answer customer questions before they even become tickets. So here we're looking at the help portal, which is also via DevRev, and customers can now directly ask a question in the help portal instead of having to search over documentation, or open a ticket. Now, AI is great, but it is only as good as the data it has available to it. DevRev's AI can learn from various sources, including knowledge-based articles, simple question and answers, customer conversations via tickets, and other mediums. But it is very likely that you already have a lot of these sources, in which case the question is, how can I make use of what I already have? So to help us with that, we have Alec Booth from Bolt, who recently migrated from Zendesk to DevRev to talk about his experience. So let's bring on Alec.
Hey there, can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you perfectly. All right, Alec.
Perfect.
So maybe you can start off by telling us a little bit about Bolt and what you do at Bolt.
Yeah, so Bolt is we're looking to be one of the shopping identity providers as well as powering a lot of our merchants' checkouts. So one-click checkout, we have a lot of data and information on the users and a vast shopper network. These shoppers can come on to any one of Bolt's merchants, click into checkout, and with one click, check out and get their items delivered. I lead our support team, and as of a couple weeks ago, our risk team as well. And DevRev has been an incredible partner as well as one of the main drivers of our current success in terms of metrics, as well as like our agents' productivity and merchant happiness.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds great to hear. Now, you recently migrated using AirDrop, and how long did that process take to migrate from Zendesk to DevRev?
Yeah, so our Zendesk to DevRev migration was a very quick decision. We had 2 months between the end of our contract with Zendesk to having to sign another contract with DevRev. We signed that contract in the beginning of February, and we were fully migrated by February 15th. We brought along with us about 100,000 tickets, around 8 to 10 different automations and routing procedures, as well as being able to import our entire knowledge base into DevRev to help power some of this AI.
Yeah, and did you work with our own support team during the implementation process?
We did have our implementation manager, but I felt like everything was pretty self-explanatory and pretty quick to use, right? We leaned on them when things we were trying to understand something. You know, we only had 2 weeks to move in, so things were still fairly new. There wasn't a really solid plan in place of how this was going to happen. But with the partnership between DevRev and our team, we were able to get things lifted and off the ground fairly easy and pretty self-serviceable.
Awesome, awesome. Now that you've migrated your data over, I believe you also migrated a different system, but in terms of AI features, how have they helped you, or have you used any? What's your experience with them?
Yeah, we actually use quite a number of them. I'd say the number one that I think is most important is actually this help site search here. What we saw is after we implemented this, we saw about a 60% drop in tickets that came from the knowledge base into DevRev. That's still holding true today, and our team is constantly updating the Q&As, testing things out, making sure the answers that are given are accurate for our customers, and are looking forward to being able to kind of isolate and audience the different answers depending on the data that we have on those particular merchants. Some of the things that have really helped out, I think we're all familiar with when your AM or a CSM comes to you and asks you what the current status of a ticket is. They actually have the functionality to go in and just do /summarize. They get a summary of the ticket, and they don't need to actually ping or bother anybody. And we all know how that, it's about 30 to 45 minutes before you can get your head back into the game after being
Yeah.
distracted from something. And then we do have some classification and routing, which has been pretty incredible. So as we look forward, some of the AI agent stuff coming out, I think is really going to accelerate us and get our team back to, what we all want to do as support people, which is not, do the reactionary issues, but to be able to be more proactive and to chart a course towards that proactivity.
Got it, got it. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. If there is something else that you're looking forward to in regards to AI or in your future to DevRev, what would it be?
I think it could just be summarized as like getting the merchant or the customer the information they need, where they are, and when they need it. So much of our information and our knowledge is in these knowledge-based articles or in these previous tickets. And if, when I put myself into the customer shoe, when I'm reading a knowledge-based article, I don't just have to understand the information that's, the steps to take. I have to understand the entire platform. Because if there's a word in there I don't understand or an acronym that's in there, like you're likely to lose me. So I'm looking forward to the AI really being able to kind of stand alongside our merchants and our customers to really help guide them through their journey, right? Like, self-service is great when you're talking about like onboarding a new product, but imagine like you have a standby agent who's not bound by time zones. That AI agent can help lead you through there. And then that also frees up the agents on the other end to do that more meaningful work. They're no longer like digging through logs. They're no longer digging through knowledge-based articles to find something that's already available. They're able to get that answer, give it to the merchant, and then move on to something that's either, more proactive or actually creating value for merchants. I think support teams are uniquely positioned as the knowledge holders. You have engineering, you have product, and all these people have bits and pieces of the different platform. But when you're support, you have to know everything unless
Yeah.
you're lucky enough to be in a really specialized team. And I think AI helps kind of make everybody experts, not just the support people. It's the engineers, it's the product managers, it's the business ops people, it's your customers and their shoppers. Like it just brings everybody together and kind of superpowers them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Alec, thanks for joining us. I'll let you get back to it and good. Best of luck.
Thanks, Arturo. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Cool. So I guess now we heard from Bolt and how they're using AI today. But let's look at some of the other AI agent features a little closer. So not only can it resolve queries without human intervention, like we saw with Bolt, but it can also fully automate frontline support. The DevRev Support AI agent is not just a chatbot with built-in menus. It understands natural language. This means customers can talk to it just like they would a support agent. They can ask questions that don't necessarily fit a menu that they have to try to understand. But not only can it understand customers' queries, it can also query for data dynamically. That is, the agent can, whether that is from a knowledge-based article like we saw, or from APIs. It could perform some API requests, perform some searches, and so on. It can also perform tasks and start background process. It also knows when it has reached its bounds, and it should hand off the conversation to a human or potentially to another agent. So let's take a look at what an interaction with the support agent can look like. And we'll have another little clip for this one. So DevRev has several services that your customers can take advantage of. We previously saw the search surface in Bolt's Help Center, but we're going to look at what we call the DevRev plug here. And this is kind of your traditional chat widget. And what you'll notice here is that the customer is not being asked to select from a set menu. The interaction is being carried out in a very natural way. Now, you'll also see that the AI agent is taking input from the user, and you'll see that it'll combine it with knowledge it has about pricing and tiers. Now, again, this knowledge can be fed through Q&As or knowledge-based articles or simply indexing your website. The AI agent is then going to proceed to create a ticket for further follow-up. Now, it would be possible for the agent to carry out the interaction further, but the bounds of what it can and cannot do are configurable. And in this case, the agent knows, hey, I have to escalate this to someone else. And you'll see another neat feature of DevRev, which is that the link between customer conversations and tickets. Now, a customer conversation is what you just saw, a simple chat, whereas a ticket is something that will need to be worked on and should be tracked. It has a beginning, it has an in progress, and it has an end. And the customer can always follow up and check in on the progress. But DevRev is not the only one that is playing with AI. The existing legacy tools are also trying to introduce AI features, just like the ones you saw. But the difference is that they are bolting this on into platforms that are not really designed for AI. DevRev has been built from the ground up with AI in mind. You'll see it in the way we handle data, whether native or from an external source. You will see it sprinkled in ways big and small throughout the platform. And in this next clip, you'll see just some of the ways AI is infused throughout the DevRev platform. So what we're going to see here first is our clustering feature. And in this, DevRev AI analyzes some of the tickets and clusters them into related groups. The important part here is not necessarily the cluster itself, which is pretty nice, but that clustering is using one of these surfaces that is made available for DevRev. You can use the same surface for other AI features. Next, we'll see DevRev's autofill feature. This autofill feature can help generate text, such as descriptions. It can summarize multiple issues. It can, of course, my personal favorite, generate release notes as well. Now, we previously talked about how loss of context can occur when existing support tools. So how does DevRev handle that? For one, DevRev is an all-in-one platform. It's not just a support tool. Developers, sales, and operation teams can all also live in DevRev. DevRev knows how to handle issues. It knows how to handle accounts in different stages, and it can handle incidents, and so on. So these data models are native to DevRev. Realistically, though, you're probably not going to convince all your teams to jump into DevRev. So there will need to be some sort of integration. So how do we avoid the pitfalls of the integrations in the existing systems while still having to coexist with other services? So let's look at a specific integration to show the difference. And what we're looking at here is the DevRev Jira integration. This is the one my team specifically works on, and it is almost certainly the most prominent integration for collaborating between any support tool and developers. Now, the biggest DevRev differentiator is that unlike existing integrations that allow communication and mostly read-only access of a limited set of fields in Jira, DevRev performs a deep copy. So for every issue that exists in Jira, there is a full clone in DevRev. This has all the fields that you care about, and even some that you don't. It has all the attachments. It has all the communication. Agents in DevRev can respond to this issue, just like if it were another issue created in DevRev natively. And what is more is all the data is usable over the entire DevRev platform. So yes, this issue originated in Jira, but it looks as if it were native. It can be used for workflows and automations. It can be used for AI features. It can be used in vistas and analytics. And we not only bring in the issues, though, we bring in much more. We bring in user data. In other words, if this issue in Jira is owned by a particular user, that particular user will also be created in DevRev. They may not be able to log in unless you invite them, but you'll know that they exist. We also bring in the hierarchy. So if you have that epic story subtask, that'll come in, as well as other relationships like block by and so on. We also bring in custom fields, whether those are custom fields added by other tools or by your own team. We even bring in custom stages and stage diagrams. We also have what is called smart user matching. So I mentioned we bring in the users that exist in Jira, but if those users also happen to exist in DevRev, then we'll know to assign work to them and not necessarily create a new user. This has the intended side effect that if those people, those developers ever chose to come in and start using DevRev, well, all their data is already there, the ownership is correct, their customization is already set up, the stages that they're used to is all there, again, because this is a deep copy. But support engineers don't just rely on development to solve issues, though. Customer problems, kind of like how Alec mentioned, often have to be diagnosed or reproduced before being escalated or handed off to development. In legacy support platforms, this is really an afterthought. You might integrate with something that brings in some tool, you might have a link to go explore somewhere else, but DevRev was actually built with observability in mind. So DevRev's built-in observability capabilities include session recording, and that's just one of them, but it's a good example we'll use here. Now, the session recording is available via our plug, again, our chat widget, and this is useful not just for support engineers working on customer issues, but even in determining customer drop-offs that affect businesses. So some of the features include the ability to monitor API responses, including things like slow API response or an HTTP 500. It also includes the ability to look at heat maps, so you know where your customers are most frequently clicking on or the paths they're most frequently traversing. You can also identify drop-offs in your funnel, and you can integrate this not just with your website, but also your mobile apps. And because all this data is being stored natively in DevRev, this information is available to agents, both humans and AI, to act upon. So one example of providing proactive support based on observability comes to us from this financial services company. They used DevRev's observability features, including heat maps and session replays, and they identified a date picker as a problematic part of their Know Your Customer process. After shipping a change, they saw the process time more than half. So they went from 20 seconds to just 7 seconds. So let's take a look at what those session replays look like. So in this clip, we will focus on a specific session. Now, this is helpful when debugging a particular problem with a specific customer, as opposed to the more analytical view where you can look at multiple sessions and follow their funnel and so on. But here you will see that we have not only basic details like device information, but we also have a timeline. And this timeline kind of tracks all that user activity, and we can see related logs, stack traces, and so on. We're showing this view because this is most often what a support engineer that is looking at something a customer mentioned will look at. Now, another gap we talked about earlier is the lack of extensibility, specifically when it comes to creating workflows or automations for business processes. Some of the legacy support tools do offer workflow engines. Some of them, they go by different names, but they're essentially the same thing. But typically, these are limited scope and not themselves extensible. If you want to take the more advanced route of building apps, you can, but then you're typically stuck hosting it yourself. So it's very common to instead use a third-party service like a Zapier or a Pipedream to automate those business processes instead. And this itself has drawbacks, while Zapier and the like are actually very capable, it's another service to maintain and pay for. DevRev, on the other hand, has its own app platform. We call it the Snap-in platform, With the Snap-in platform, you can build apps and automations that operate on DevRev without worrying about hosting and maintaining them. DevRev already comes with a built-in set of the most common snap-ins you may need, but the platform also allows you to extend it via high-code snap-ins and no-code workflows, and something in between as well. Now, these snap-ins also enable data migration. Some of the airdrops that we mentioned are powered by these snap-ins. And it's not just about data migration, it's also sync. It works both ways. Now, the most popular sources are included out of the box, but again, this is also extensible. So if you have some obscure or less commonly used service, you can always extend it. While snap-ins typically refer to these high-code automations, which are very flexible, for most users, you actually probably only need the DevRev workflow. With the DevRev workflow engine, you won't have to turn to external services or coding to augment your support process. DevRev already comes with a core set of workflows to cover a standard support process, but these can be extended or completely replaced to meet your business needs. The workflow engine itself is also extensible, so if an event or an action you want is not there, you can browse the marketplace, see if it's already been built, or you can build your own. Now, all the events and actions in the world are by themselves not enough to build your business flows. You'll need the data that powers those flows. And with DevRev, the data is available, whether it originated in DevRev or came from an external source via airdrop. Remember how DevRev does not just display data from external sources, it makes it available throughout the platform. This means you can make decisions based on Salesforce data or Jira data, just as you would if that data was created natively. So let's check out a demo and see just how easy and intuitive it is to build a workflow on DevRev.
Welcome to DevRev's Workflow Engine demo. Today, we're showcasing how our powerful and flexible engine delivers personalized automations tailored to your organization's unique needs. Whether you're a high-code expert or prefer no-code solutions, our engine accommodates all skill levels. First, our pre-built library of workflow nodes. These cover essential tasks like search, clustering, summarization, and sentiment analysis. You can implement these powerful functions without writing custom code, significantly simplifying your workflow creation. Reliability is crucial, which is why we offer best-in-class error management. If an automation falters, you'll have instant visibility into affected workflows. Our automated logs pinpoint which changes introduced errors, enabling swift troubleshooting. A standout feature is our native workflow engine. There's no middleware. Our engine is built right into the platform. This means no additional third-party tools and no extra training for your ops team, saving both time and resources. Scalability is at our core. Whether you're handling thousands or millions of executions daily, our engine scales effortlessly with your business needs. Lastly, we've incorporated AI-powered automation. With out-of-the-box AI-based nodes and generation capabilities, we're bringing intelligent automation to enhance your productivity. By adopting DevRev's workflow engine, you're choosing a solution that's not just flexible and reliable, but powerful enough to meet all your automation needs. From streamlining operations to boosting efficiency, we're here to transform your workflow experience. Thank you for watching. We look forward to helping you revolutionize your operations with DevRev.
Cool. So one of the problems with having teams on different services with just simple read-only integrations like the ones we talked about is that we lose data. Now, we talked about how DevRev preserves data from across different services and uses AI and workflows, but analytics are just as important. Organizations faced with this problem often turn to yet another service to aggregate their information and generate reports. But with DevRev, you can take advantage of our native offerings. So here's a clip that's going to highlight what we call Customer 360. Customer 360 emphasizes the customer data. This gives information about the health of a customer. It signals potential at-risk customers, and much more. We also have other ones, such as Developer 360 and Product 360, with emphasis on build, productivity, and the product itself. Right. So if you're still on the fence on making a switch from Zendesk to DevRev, well, you shouldn't be. We have a built-in self-serve migration process. There's no consultants needed, no contact us needed. And in just a few clicks, you can bring over your Zendesk data and just take a look around. We have migrated everything from starter Zendesk instances to those with over 1 million tickets and years of history. And this won't affect your data. None of this data is going to get synced back. It's simple, bringing it into DevRev, seeing what it looks like. You could bring in your tickets, you could bring in your users, you can bring in your knowledge base articles. Once you have that, you could play around with the AI features and just see what it looks like. Now, you heard from Bolt, but here are some of the other companies that have migrated off of Zendesk and other support platforms using AirDrop to preserve their data. You could reach out to us using our chat widget or any other mechanism. You could support at devrev.ai, and we'll be happy to help you out. Yes, we will be sharing the deck, and there'll be the recording will also be available. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.